listeners, Tim Sylvie here. Don't worry, no more ChatGPT introductions. It's a human one this time. Before we introduce today's guest, I have to wing my way through the airwaves to bring in a man who has a resident fox and various other wildlife frequenting his garden and often this podcast. Tom Gamer, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I've just seen a squirrel, actually, just dance over the wooden picket behind me. So if you do see any wildlife, yell.
Was it a black one, a red one, a grey one?
No, it's a grey squirrel.
Very good.
The red ones are on their way out, I think, or should be coming back, hopefully.
Oh, good knowledge, good squirrel knowledge. I like our little wildlife interludes. Shall I introduce today's guest?
Go for it.
Today, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Simona de Silvestro, who at 18 years old made the move to the US to really push ahead in her racing career. Having been born in Thun in Switzerland, she forged a career through Formula BMW, Formula Toyota Atlantic, and into IndyCar, where she excelled, picking up Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500. She joined the Sauber squad in F1 in 2014 before a stint in Formula E, Aussie Supercars, and then finally a member of the Tag Heuer Formula E team with Porsche from 2019. We're excited to talk about her life career, thoughts and opinions. Simona, a very warm welcome to the Motormouth Podcast. How are you?
Thanks. Very good, actually. And it's actually Thun, so you were kind of close, but it's okay.
I saw it on some website. I was like, I don't know what that says, but I'm just going to go with Thun or Fun. But Thun, okay, got it.
Rather you than me, Tim. I mean, I've made a career of making a mess of pronunciations from around Europe. My French pronunciations are the worst, and I lived there for 2 years. So,
did you?
As I said, rather you than me.
Oh, do you speak French?
Ouais, je peux parler français.
Oh, mais oui. Très bien. Very good.
Mm.
Now, what was life like back in, I'm not even going to try and say it again, I'm just going to go with Switzerland. What was life like for you growing up in Switzerland? Our last guest, actually, Romain Grosjean, also Swiss-born. Take us through what life was like for a young Simona.
Yeah, well, actually, I didn't spend that much time in Thun. I was only 2 years, and then we moved to the French part of Switzerland. And I don't know, it was a really fun growing up. You know, I think my parents were really cool as well. They let me try all kinds of sports. And somehow I got introduced to racing a little bit, and just really fell in love with the sport, fell in love with cars. And I think that's where it brought me to today. So yeah, I was really lucky that, my parents kind of let me try anything and weren't afraid to let me, kind of do anything as a kid.
Did you ever try downhill skiing or anything like that?
I did ski. You know, I think in Switzerland, it's pretty common that as soon as you stand up, that you get put on a pair of skis and get sent down the hill. So yes, that was tried when I was about 2 years old. But you know, my car, my dad was in cars. You know, he has a car dealership in Switzerland, and I just kind of really enjoyed cars. But definitely, you know, skiing is still a big part of my life, and but yeah, I didn't quite make it as a skier.
It's amazing the similarities and the comprehension of the line. So I've got a friend who was a downhill skier, Shemi Alcott, 4-time Olympian, but her sort of comprehension of a racing line and where to be on a racetrack is very natural, and it almost is very similar to the downhill side of things, because they have to be so far ahead.
Yeah, I guess so. I've never tried to go through gates, so maybe I need to try that and see if it is pretty similar.
Don't do it at the speeds they do it at. Just start on the baby slopes.
Baby steps. So when did motorsport first come on the radar? You mentioned your dad was into cars. Is that where this love of racing first showed itself? Yeah,
pretty much. You know, I think as a baby, you know, we watched Formula One with my dad. You know, we were on the couch, and he used to say I was only quiet when Formula One was on TV. So I think the engine noise was something that really appealed to me. And you know how it really started. I think I was maybe 4 years old, and he had an opening at the dealership, and he had a few go-karts there for people to try out. And I was too small to try it. So he took me on his knees and we drove around, and I just really loved it. And I really wanted to drive by myself, and I couldn't. So I threw a tantrum a little bit. And I think to calm me down, he said, okay, maybe if you're a bit taller, you get a go-kart. So I kind of took that word by word, and pretty much every 2-3 months I would tell him that I grew a little bit. And I think when I was 6 years old, finally this go-kart showed up. So I think from a very young age, like I was pretty into anything with four wheel, anything with wheels. I like bikes and stuff like that. But yeah, the go-kart made its appearance.
So you started racing competitively around 2005, which is the same year that I started in motorsport, actually. And in 2008, you enjoyed wins in the Toyota Atlantic Series, finishing third in the standings. And it was 2010 when you made your foray into the States and IndyCar. How did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I raced in Formula Renault in 2005 in Italy, and then the move to the US really just came because I didn't have the budget really to stay in Europe. Racing is all about sponsorship and getting the right opportunity. And it was, I was kind of here, and luckily I found an American sponsor. And at the time, really, Formula BMW was a bit cheaper as well in the US than the European Championship. And it was just kind of the way to go and do it, and just keep this dream alive, to go racing. And so when I was 17, I moved to the States. My parents came with me, and put me with the team, and then they kind of left me there. But, it didn't really matter because I was driving a race car, and I knew that was the only way that, this dream was going to keep going. So this evolved really in actually winning a race in the Formula BMW. I think I was also the first woman to podium at Indianapolis because we were in with the Formula One race there. And then the next step was a logical step to go into the Atlantic Series, which I had a really strong season in 2009. I think we won 4 races. We had a few poles, and we were fighting for the championship pretty much to the last race. I think I was leading the championship all the way to the end, so it was quite exciting. Unfortunately, it didn't end like we wanted to, but sometimes things have to happen that way, and I got my shot in IndyCar. So it was quite crazy because I think I was maybe 20 when I think back. To be there and in IndyCar was super special for sure.
Am I right in saying, Simona, that the Atlantics were paired with Champ Car and you weren't on the ovals until you went to IndyCar?
Yeah, definitely. So my first ever oval was in an IndyCar at Kansas, and to be honest, it was I think at the start I just lifted a little bit, and I think all the cars just passed me. So it was really eye-opening because I'd never experienced it before, and then getting thrown in an IndyCar was it was pretty tough, and had to learn my ways around it. But for sure, I think the oval racing is can be really cool, but can be really frustrating as well. Yes.
And it wasn't long before you had your first big accident on the oval at Texas, and Texas is a very fast speedway. And did you have, before you went on the ovals, any trepidation? For the European racers going over to America, it's not, it's on their mind, it's on the radar that the ovals are very different, and it's that there's risk that comes with the ovals.
Yeah, well, at the time, not really, because I was 20. I was racing in Indy cars, and I had to just get good at it, and for sure, I think if you mentioned that crash in Texas, it was just a lot of confidence, to be honest, because the car was pretty loose, and a lot of people kept telling me that you shouldn't drive a loose car on the oval, but I felt like in control, because I'd never crashed on an oval or something like that. So I came out of turn 2 the 2 laps before, and it was already sliding a bit, but I kept catching it, so I thought it's gonna be fine. And the third time around, I didn't catch it, so it was just a big lesson, and like they say on the oval, there's the people who've been in the wall and the people that are gonna be in the wall. So it just kind of happened, and you learn from it, and I think what's difficult in the sense on an oval is that if you make a mistake or something happens, it can hurt. And I think nowadays you don't really have that on a road course or anything like that. So I think that's sometimes mentally a little bit tough, just to get over that step and learn from it. But I guess, if you are racing on an oval, that day will come, and you just learn from it and move on. Yeah.
Is it hard to mentally get over that little hump, when you have your first big incident, particularly in IndyCar, where it happens all so fast and you're in the wall before you know it, and having a car crash is a scary, scary thing. Whether it's in a racing car or a road car, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of shock, there's a lot of trauma on the body. And then mentally, how do you get yourself back up and force yourself to keep your foot down again the next time you go around that corner?
Yeah, it's a hard, I think a difficult exercise. I think for me, if I look at 2011 when I had my big crash at Indy, that one was a difficult one in a sense, because it was the first time I got hurt in a car. Before that I did crash, but nothing really happened, luckily. And that time, there was a really big fire and I really burned my hands pretty badly. And it really, to be honest, it really spooked me, because it was the first time I got hurt in a race car. And also, I wasn't sure to get back in the car at the time. So, but then, I kind of told myself, I've been doing this for so long, that's really, it's my life, it's racing. And it was just like, okay, I need to try it. And I tried it like 2 days later and qualified the car for the Indy 500. But for sure, in my head, it was hard. I had to keep telling myself, if I still have a little bit of a smile after, I need to push through it. But it's a long process, and it took a while, to find the confidence again, because what had happened, it was a suspension failure, so it was really out of my control. So it was just getting used to, having the confidence in the car, having confidence in the setup, and but for sure you had to just go a little bit further. I remember I think the qualifying was pretty crazy, because we hadn't run low aero at the time before the crash, and I remember I went out and did the first attempt, and it was pretty scary, because it's full commitment, it's 4 laps. I think the qualifying at Indy is the hardest thing you have to do in your life.
Turn the boost up.
Exactly. So you just fully committed, and we had an okay run, and then I remember my engineer come to me and be like, hey, look, if we take a bit of more aero out, I think we can qualify today. And I was like, well, okay, let's do it, and I went out, I did the first 2 laps, and I come into turn 3, and the car moves a bit, and that's where I had my crash before. So then it was just like, I just told myself, I'm like, look, it's just one more lap, and I remember taking my left foot and just squeezing the right foot and just committed to that last lap. So yeah, it's a huge step, it's a lot of commitment. It's a bit crazy, but you just gotta go through it, and we did it, and we qualified on that day. So it was amazing. Yeah.
When you're doing the Indy circuit, that big oval, and your engineer says, let's take a bit of the aero off. So presumably that's take away a little bit of downforce. So that's going to make your car a bit more slippery, a bit more lively. Do you sort of go, yeah, cool, let's get rid of that downforce and go even faster? Or do you just think, oh shit, like I'm there's a good chance I'm going to bin this?
Yeah, well, no, you take your steps usually, usually in practice you go a little bit more, but for sure, it's a huge commitment. And that's what I said before. I think in any racing series I've done, like this 4 laps at Indy are just so intense and so gnarly, because, the engineer looks at his computer, he's going to be like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And you just have to go out and do it. It's not anything else. You just have to commit and get it done. And I think that just shows, how the team is important, and how, everyone has to have the confidence in each other's ability to do it. But for sure, it's pretty gnarly. Even when you do rookie orientation, or, you go back to the speedway and you have to do these phases, you have to go 200 miles and do all that. And every time you get to the top level where you have to go flat out, it's just like, oh God, this is going to be crazy. And going into turn 1, it's a weird feeling, because you just, your brain is telling you that's pretty stupid, but you just commit to it. And then and then you get used to it, to be honest. Yeah, but the qualifying with low downforce is tricky.
I think Callum Arlott said something recently, just flippantly said, I'd love to go back in history and work and speak to the person that invented this and wonder what he was thinking. And then there was a great video of testing recently of Marcus Armstrong standing on the outside of turn 1 with Marshall Pruitt, and his face, he was just, because he's not done it yet, and his face was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because last year it was the first time I went to the race, and just to watch it, because I'd been in it always before, and I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is so fast, and it's funny, once you're in the car, you just kind of, I don't know, you get used to it, but when you're from the outside, it's just, I think it's pretty ridiculous that I was thinking, I can't believe I'm doing that, like it's pretty crazy, but pretty cool at the same time.
Just before we move on to say Formula E, this year you're really close to being the 34th car, to bringing bump day. We are going to have bump day this year. How close were you, and how disappointed are you that you just didn't quite get that program together? I think you were looking, and Beth was looking for a partner. It didn't quite work out with ECR this year, but it would have been wonderful to have seen you on the grid.
Yeah, it was. This year is in the sense a little bit strange, because we had this deal last year with ECR, which was really good. We did the 4 races with them, and then the plan was really to keep going. But a few things just on the people side, there wasn't enough people really to run the car like this year and stuff like that. So it kind of made it a little bit difficult. And I think it was just more a bit of the sense, once we go, I think we've done the Indy 500 once, we've done a few road courses. If we come back, we need to grow. And that's something that unfortunately for this year didn't, that it just didn't align. And we sat down with Beth, and we're working really hard for next year to get something together. And, ECR is an amazing team, and, we don't know where their road is going. So I think there's a lot of things in the pipeline right now for next year that is going to be really strong. And sometimes you just need to, be the grown, even though you want to be in the race, but just how it was going to be was, I think, going to be really difficult, and just didn't really make sense to do it. So I think next year is going to hopefully look really good. Yeah.
And how important is it to have the captain on board, Penske's support, because they've been so pro the whole operation since the inception?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think, to be honest, when in 2021, when I got the call, from Beth and asked me if I could be on a call with Roger, at the night, it was.
He is just a legend, isn't he?
He is, he's amazing. I think, I know him for a long time now, and even when I raced in Australia, I remember I had this race in Perth and he was there, and I had a pretty good qualifying, and he walked all the way up to pit lane, all the way into my garage, and told me, "Oh, good job," So it's amazing to have somebody like Roger Penske, kind of acknowledge what you're doing and stuff like that. I think it's pretty cool for sure. Mm-hmm.
One more IndyCar related question before we move on, like Tom says, into other things like Formula E. But we had Roman Grosjean on the show last week, and we were quizzing him about some of the best drivers that he shared a track with. And the name that he picked out right at the top was Scott McLaughlin. How highly do you rate him as a driver, having probably kept an eye on him the last couple of years? Is he right up there?
Yeah, I think so, because he is, he comes from supercars, which is completely a different beast. And, he was really dominating there. And then he got into the IndyCars and picked it up really quickly. For sure, I think he's in a good team. He has really good people around him, and all that. But I think, even compared to Joseph and Will, he's doing really, really an amazing job. And I think, there's not many drivers who can just jump into something and be really competitive. So I think it's really remarkable what he's doing. And I think what is really cool about him, he's really cool person as well. He has a really good personality, and I think is good for the sport in that sense. And yeah, it's cool to see him do really well.
I think my best Scott McLaughlin moment was his first win when he inadvertently fell out of the car and then got up and sat on the exhaust.
Exactly. I think it will just stay in the memories from everyone, you know. So I think everyone is nervous when he wins a race, you know, what he's going to do. I don't know.
Now, let's turn our attention to Formula E. So we saw you in Berlin, actually. We were there and we caught up with you. We were just saying off air how I had to jump in and do a last-minute Q&A with you after several pints of beer, which was an interesting experience, but I thought went well. I've been told it went well. I don't remember much about it, but thank you for that experience. What's your role with Porsche in Formula E, first of all, and then we'll just talk a little bit about that insane weekend in Berlin.
Yeah, so I'm part of the team as the reserve and development driver. So I'm sharing the role with David Beckman. So yeah, my role is kind of, you know, to be in the sim, doing some work, especially, or, you know, testing the car before it got homologated during the off season. So that's kind of my role. And yeah, if anything happens to the main drivers, you know, I would be jumping in. So I'm still hoping for that day, but you know, it's a bit difficult in Formula E. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get there. But let's just talk about that weekend in Berlin. So, I mean, it's been covered very positively by the wider motorsport community on the whole. You know, over 300 overtakes, protesters on the track, packed grandstands. I mean, they could have had way more people in that venue and they would have filled the seats. It was a double header. We had beautiful hot sunshine on Saturday, pissing down with rain on Sunday. It was a crazy weekend. What did you make of it from being in a team, from a team perspective, as a spectacle? Formula E feels like it's starting to get there. Berlin really cemented that for me. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think what we see with this Gen 3 car, the racing is quite different than what we had in the past. And I think it's really interesting in seeing how things are developing. You know, like you said, there's so many overtakes, so many strategies, you know, and I think it's interesting, you know, and I think it's for all of us, even in the team, you know, now that we are aware how the racing is going at the moment, you know, it just opens also a little bit the perspective. You have to open your mind a little bit in how you are going to race, because it definitely, I think this year is not likely any traditional racing we know in any other racing series, or even we knew with the Gen 2 car.
I think what's interesting for me as well is the sort of topsy-turvy grid. So the people that race well and, you know, consume the energy efficiently, they're not always that quick over a lap. So you tend to see people sort of qualifying that midfield, having the jeopardy of getting through the first couple of corners, but then rising through the field to the front. And you've seen that with Porsche at the beginning of the year, and then they're very dominant in the races. You've also seen it with Jaguar lately, where actually their qualifying's not amazing, but their race pace is very special.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from our team, you know, how we started the year, in the race we were really dominant. You know, we were so strong in the first three races. I think our efficiency was it was really good. You know, now we see that some other teams, you know, have done a lot of homework and are getting closer. So I think it just shows how the championship is evolving quickly. You know, if you see, you got Jaguar, you know, in the beginning of the year they weren't that strong, but now I think they are really, really strong, and it just shows like everyone is working really hard. And I think it just shows also the potential that Formula E has. You know, even if you start off not so good, you know, you can't really change that many things in the car. You know, there's just a lot of little things, but once all these little things start to work, you know, on the software side and things like that, you can make a big impact. So I think it makes it quite exciting. And yeah, the races have been cool to watch, because you never know what is going to happen. And it's definitely pretty crazy out there, I would say.
Going back to Berlin, I think the moment of the weekend was Nick Cassidy's radio traffic. I think he became a viral sensation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I think it is pretty entertaining. Let's say it like that.
Yeah. It's good. And Porsche are obviously positioned quite nicely with Pascal is second in the championship, 20 points behind Nick Cassidy. Da Costa not too far back in sixth, and the team in second in the team's championship. So it's looking pretty good moving forward. One thing that stood out for me on the not so good side was the Monday rookie test, where there were, I think, 23 drivers. And I was at an event on the Friday. It was a team event, not a Formula E event. It was run by a team. And there was a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion. And then one person said to me, this is all very interesting and good and well, but there's not one out of 23 drivers. There's not one woman taking part in the rookie test on the Monday. As a woman, which you are, how disappointed were you with that? Or is it just one of those things? It was circumstantial. We shouldn't read too much into it.
Yeah, I think for sure, I think it's disappointing because I think now, I think there's quite a few girls out there that are driving. If you look at last year at the W Series, now at the F1 Academy thing, I think there's a few drivers out there. If you look at Jamie Chadwick, I think those are all people who could have gotten invited. I think it would have made a lot of sense. Now the ruling is a little bit strange as well. If you've participated in some, okay, you're not counting as a rookie, but I think I think it would have been cool to see one or two out there, but I think at the end of the day, it is sometimes also, like you said, it could be circumstances, and people already committed to other things, and you don't really know, if somebody got contacted and all that. But for sure, I think it's something that we need to push still more. I think there's a few good things happening, but still, I think when we get to the top level of motorsport, if it's in Formula E, if it's in F1 and IndyCar and all that, I think it's still difficult. Still frustrating, I think it still can be better, and if we look at myself with Beth as well, we've started something good, but it's also not so easy, it's not so straightforward like it should be sometimes.
And I'm sure Susie Wolff, who heads up the new F1 Academy, has that connection into Formula E. I'm sure she was aware of that as well, and would want to change that. You've got some great, some big names at the front of that F1 Academy grid now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be good to see how it develops. At the end, it's still Formula 4, and I think a lot of what we know, what the struggle is usually after. Once you get to Formula 3, Formula 2, or when you get to IndyCar or wherever you're going. But those are usually the last steps that are missing. Even if I look at my career. I've had good results, but at the end, it's always kind of missing this last step in a good team, in a long, a few year contract as well, to develop as a driver. So hopefully, some of the girls that are going to come out there, they will get the support, for the seasons to come, and the mountain they have to climb. I really hope that is going to happen, because I think that's really the only way. I think you're going to have somebody that is really successful, if you give them the time and give them the opportunity to grow as well, and not, if they have one bad year, just forget about them. So I think that's what we need to work towards.
I think that's often overlooked, is that continuity, that stability, that opportunity to develop. You look at Felipe Drogovic, for example, it was stability and actually sticking at it and having that funding to be able to do that. I think it's almost impossible to just filter from championship to championship, drop in and out, and not have that. Look at Jamie Chadwick, for example, that the uphill struggle that she faces now in Indy Next, because she's going into America to learn the tracks, to do it's a huge amount of pressure. Everyone's like, she's got to be up there, she's got to win, she's got to do this, and actually she needs time. And then people will say, well, look at her age, time's against her, and it's just this never-ending spiral of pressure. But actually, it's a lot harder than it looks, and most drivers, male or female, would struggle in that space.
Yeah, exactly. I think the perfect example is Marcus Ericsson. I think now he's somebody who can win championships, somebody who can win races week in and week out, and I don't know how many years he's in IndyCar now. I think it's at least 4 years, you know, and the first year he was there, I think it was a big struggle, and now he's just found, you know, the people that he's working with, it's working really well, and now, you know, it's really showing what he can do, and I think that's really what is important. I think on the, you know, being female and all that, you know, is sometimes it really always gets talked about, you know, it'd be great, and then, you know, but there's not really sometimes the help behind to make that happen. You know, even if I look at myself in 2013, you know, I think I finished 13th in the championship, you know, in front of Joseph and stuff like that, and now he's 2 times champion, you know, and I don't know, I'm not one of the IndyCar, you know, I'm not even in the IndyCar. So those are things sometimes, you know, I think in a career that can be frustrating, but, you know, you keep pushing, and, you know, even for myself, you know, I've been away from it a little bit now, but, you know, I really hope that with Beth we get something really strong together, and you know, can build on that. But yeah, those sometimes I think it can be frustrating, and but, you know, you just need to keep your head down, and hopefully times will change.
Now, I want to touch on Formula One a little bit. Formula One's in a slightly weird position for me at the moment. Like, it's grown tremendously over the last few years, as we know. There's, you know, all these races in the States coming online, and Drive to Survive has changed the face of it for a number of people, and there's a lot of new fans, and there's lots of good things happening. But it feels like at the moment it's under the microscope slightly when you look at some of the more recent races and the street circuits that we've got, some of these modern street circuits, reduced DRS areas, changes to sprint weekends, new driver intros like we had in Miami with LL Cool J, which actually, incidentally, I didn't mind too much. Kind of enjoyed the cringiness of it, and seeing the drivers look a bit like,
big cheese ball.
Myself. Yeah, and there's a lot going on. But what's your take on current Formula One? Do you think it's headed in the right direction, or is it just a bit muddled?
You know, I think there's cool things, you know, for sure. Like, you know, I really tuned into the Miami race because, yeah, I wanted to see also, you know, all the hype that is around. You know, I think I really watched the pre-race thing as well, you know, which I usually don't do. I just kind of tune in for the start. So I think it has positives for sure. You know, now on the racing side, I think that can be better still. You know, I think last year was really exciting season. This year, unfortunately, it's maybe not as exciting because you only have one team at the front. But, you know, if you look back at, you know, a few years ago where Formula One was and it is now, I think from a racing point, like, I always loved Formula One because I grew up with it, you know, and I didn't really, you know, that's what I was watching and stuff like that. But I think for the everyday person, you know, having this hype a little bit and this show, I think helps, you know, like we see like a lot of new fans, brings a lot of new fans to the table.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I want to see more of those intros just to make my mind up if I do like it or
well,
not.
You know, actually, what I, you know, I was watching the intro, and then, you know, at the Indy 500 we also have an intro, like, but yeah. I think it's a bit more there, like in Miami. I thought it was a bit crazy, you know, kind of like what's really happening. But on one side, what I kind of liked, you know, and I think for somebody who's not really into racing, they actually get to see the person, you know, and I think, you know, they get to see the driver, you know, because normally they just kind of, there's a lot of people around the car, the driver, so you don't really see that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Maybe I would do it a bit more classy.
I liked Will.i.am. Why is no one talking about the fact that Will.i.am just stood there doing the same move with his hand for like 20 minutes as the intro? So what? I know he wrote that song, or that intro song, but I was like, what is that? Like, what is he doing? Just, that confused me, Tom, not gonna lie.
I mean, I love the sort of, you know, that's why I love IndyCar, because the show that the Americans put around sport, I think, really adds to the entertainment, and you know, the Indy 500's just brilliant for that. I'm also pulled into that argument, being involved with Sky Sports IndyCar coverage, that sort of argument that IndyCar's booming at the moment. You don't know who's going to win a race, the jeopardy, the excitement, and obviously Formula One at the moment, there is that narrative about how to improve the show. You always know who's going to win, that kind of stuff. And there's a real debate going on, especially on social media, about what's best, how you can do it. But I think, they're two very different series. What's your thoughts on that, Simona?
Yeah, I agree. IndyCar, I think it's super exciting right now. Every time I watch the races, I think it's amazing because you don't, I think even Barber, which is usually a track that is pretty boring, I thought it was a really good race. And I think it's just different, in the sense because it is more of a spec series. The cars are just going to be more likely to be on top of each other, and more things can happen. A little bit similar to Formula E as well, and Formula One, just because you can develop so much, you're just gonna have this disparity between the cars and all that. But that's what Formula One has always been about. It's about technology and things like that, and which team builds the best cars. So it's, I don't know, for sure it can be, I think, more exciting. But last year I think it was a really exciting season in Formula One. So I think it just depends which year you're in, and if more teams are able to be right there. Imagine Alonso now is going to be even more competitive, and can maybe fight. I think that'd be super cool. Already now it's cool that it's finishing third. So I think, maybe a little
and
bit.
Alonso, everybody wants him to win a race in the same vein that everyone wants Romain Grosjean to win a race as well. That they're both being pushed hugely by the fan base.
Yeah, I'm loving Alonso at the moment. He's cracking me up. He's doing some funny little things. He's clearly enjoying his racing, and hopefully he does get that win. I mean, all we need is for the Red Bulls to take each other out, and he'll probably get that win. No, we're quickly running out of time, so we're going to move it on to our final three. And these final three questions we ask all of our guests, and they're brought to us by our partners at WTF1Talent.com. Head to WTF1Talent.com if you're a budding F1 content creator and interested to hear how they can supercharge your career. So I'll kick off with the first one this week. Simona, what's got you excited at this very moment? Could be anything.
Actually, my bobsled training right now.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Wanted to talk about this. Yes. This is all over your socials. It looks completely mental.
It is. It's pretty mental. I'm suffering a lot in athletic training. So, but it's quite exciting little project.
Sorry, squirrel alert. I have to stop. It's becoming a thing. There
was a squirrel. I wasn't going to say anything, but we just missed a squirrel.
Nice.
Sorry,
How did we not talk about Porsche? We were talking about downhill skiing earlier.
I know.
Perfect in.
I know. Oh, dear. Yeah. No, it does look insane. And why? That was my only question. Why on earth would you put yourself through this?
Well, so as a kid, every time I would watch the Olympic Games, I thought it'd be really cool to go to the Olympic Games. And then maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I was thinking, okay, how could I achieve this? How could I get to the Olympics? And I kind of went through the sports, and I figured, driving a bobsled could be similar than driving a race car. And then, 2 years ago, being, I think at the time I was 32, I was like, if I want to do this, I need to try it now. If I want to try to achieve this dream, and here we go. So we are in this project now, and it's been going not too bad. I think we finished third in the Swiss Championships. So it's been a pretty good winter activity with hopefully some big goals to be achieved. Yeah.
And can you choose the person you got in the back, because they can sprint? Hey,
Yeah, I need to find some rockets, for at the back. So that's that's what's actually funny about this project is. I've been racing cars for so long, and you have these big teams and stuff like that. And now, with this, I really have to handle everything myself. I'm driving with this bus around from track to track. I'm trying to hire people, fast athletes. I'm trying to work on the bobsled, with different people to make it faster. So yeah, it's a fun thing, but really intense as well, because you need to control everything. But it makes it kind of challenging but fun at the same time.
There's a huge amount of tech, because Sauber are involved, aren't they, with the German sleds? Am I right in saying? Or?
Well, they did build one. And I don't know, maybe some wind tunnel stuff is happening now. On the women's side, you have monobob, which is a single bobsled, and two men. On the monobob, it's pretty restrained what you can do. You need to buy the same sled for everyone and stuff like that. On the two men, you can do a little bit more things. So yeah, I think this winter we'll be trying a few things, that maybe work on a race car and maybe don't work on a bobsled. I don't know.
Yeah. You know the commentator Martin Haven, he does all of the world endurance stuff.
Yeah.
Because he does the bobsleigh commentary.
Does
And
it?
actually, he's got a bad back for decades because he once went in the back of a bobsleigh and the compression completely finished him, and he's sort of mid-thoracic. He's about half a foot shorter now, I think, with a bad back.
I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. Well, actually, like last year when, I was training a lot in monobob, and then finally I was able, okay, I can go 2-man. And, I had to call all my friends and be like, so, do you want to come bobsledding? And they were all like, oh, how many times have you done it? I'm like, well, it's the first time, So they're like all kind of didn't want to be the first ones, but I did find some courageous friends who committed to come.
Courageous
yes,
exactly. Stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love that.
Tom,
Right.
over to you.
Shall I ask question 2?
Yeah, go for it.
How much of your success do you put down to the luck and being in the right place at the right time? And how much do you put down to sort of hard work and grafting? And you've clearly got that in abundance, because not only have you competed across the globe in the biggest sporting event in the world, now at 32, you've sat down and gone, I'm going to go to the Olympics.
So, I think determination is really important for sure. I think that's something that is going to bring you far, if you work really hard towards something. But as well, I think being in the right place at the right time is a really important aspect. If I look at my career, when I think back 2009, I was really in the right environment. I had an amazing engineer at the time. The team really had my back as well, and we were super successful. So I think it's a bit of both, and I think people who at the end make it, it's because they put the work into it for sure, and also don't get pulled down if some years nothing's happening, and just keep fighting for it, and sometimes then a door opens again. So yeah, it's a bit of both, but I think the hard work and the stubbornness, I think, is an important part of it.
So what you're saying is, if you keep driving forward, if you keep knocking on the doors, you sort of make your own luck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I'm at Porsche now, and I have Beth, called me 2 years ago. I never thought I'd be driving an IndyCar again, and here I was, back in the Indy 500 and driving a few road courses. So you never know what happens, and you just keep being ready for whatever opportunity comes.
Absolutely. Keep moving. Final one for you. And before we come on to this one, I have to send an apology out to some of our listeners who did submit a couple of questions, which we're unfortunately going to have to run out of time on. But I just to name check Rasmussen, Sally San, Jenna, MCC1, and Scalarandi _G. Apologies we didn't get around to your questions. Maybe we can stick them on social, and Simona can answer them on Twitter and Insta. But final question from us, Simona. What are you scared of?
It's not squirrels, is it?
It's not squirrels. Yeah. No, I didn't. I actually don't like heights. Yeah, I don't like flying and heights. So that's something that I don't feel comfortable with it.
So ski jumping was out the question when you were.
That was out of the question. Definitely, it's that would be a no-go. Exactly.
What was yours, Tom, when we had you on? What was your thing, your fear?
Yeah, I don't like heights. I don't like flying either. So I can't remember exactly what I said, but I do share your fear there.
Yeah. I won't go into mine again, the trichophobia or whatever it's called. It just, people think I'm weird. So I'm just going to leave it there. Listen, Simona, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. All the best with the rest of the season, which is rapidly coming to a close in Formula E. It's finishes so early in the year. It comes around all too quick. Hopefully we see you once again smashing it in IndyCar on a more full-time basis. And I'm sure we'll see you trackside soon. But for now, thanks so much for joining us on the Motormouth Podcast.
Thank you.